So once I had learnt about the different programming languages I would be using, the next step on my journey was looking at firstly, how do APIs work? What are they? But then secondly, after I'd done that, was looking at which APIs I wanted to use and how to integrate them into my application. You see, something that's fascinated me for quite a long time and something that I really thought could be an opportunity to develop my code literacy this semester was the integration of APIs into my application. The first one of these is the Microsoft Face API. This uses machine learning to allow the developer, such as myself, to send a request to it and get back all this interesting information about the user's face. Things could exist that we get back are like the emotional response. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you disgusted? In order to start looking at this and how to implement it, I first read the documentation on the Microsoft website. You can see here that this breaks it down. This tells us what we need to do. We're filtered by JavaScript because this was the language that I used in developing my application. What we can see here is a sample response. This is what I was aiming to get back. Once I'd read this documentation, I finally worked out how to get a response. But in order to do that, I needed to sign up to the Microsoft Azure portal and register my application with it. We can see here that we're getting up the portal. I created an application in Azure called Friendalizer. If we go into it here, we can see some interesting information. Once I'm in the Friendalizer application, we can see I can get some interesting information here from the portal. Things, first of all, like my application key that I discussed earlier. This is important. This I'll copy here because we will use that later. I then used another application called Postman, which allows us to send HTTP requests. You can see I have Postman open here, sending a post request to the Microsoft Cognitive API endpoint / face. And here we pass in their attributes, which I looked at earlier, emotion and gender. So that's what we want to get back. But in order to do that, I worked out I also needed to pass in our API key. And that's the key we had earlier. So we can just pass that in there. Oh, we can just pass that in, same thing there. You can also pass in the image URL, but just to show, we submit that and boom, Microsoft sends back this interesting information about the man. So we have some just high level information about the facial attributes and then also the gender. So the gender is male, and we can tell here that he is 100% happy. Once I had the Face API set up, I then went about setting up authentication with Facebook. In order to do that, I started here on the Facebook Graph API endpoint documentation. I started by looking through this, and this told me that I had to set up a login with Facebook in my app. So that's something I did. I set up login with Facebook by going to this documentation here. This is something I've never even thought about before, so my code literacy was really challenged. I went through a lot of documentation here just to learn how this works. After reading through all of it, I then looked at another Stack Overflow article, which actually pointed me to a library called Angular Social Login X. And this was just a simple library that I could use in my Angular application to easily log in with Facebook. I followed these steps here, which signed me in. That was really cool. So I did that, and once I'd done that, I got it working, and that was great. But as soon as I got it working, I wanted to get the friend list API working, which is another endpoint of Facebook's that allows you to get a list of all the users' friends and their photos. But what I realized quickly was after reading the fine print of the friend list API, I worked out that I actually wasn't allowed to get a list of the user's friends. It was now um, it was blocked to developers unless you go through Facebook app review. And this is for security reasons. And this is something that taught me a lot about user privacy online, and actually really resonated with me in regards to the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal, a scandal that Facebook was involved in, particularly for giving out sensitive friend data to developers. So this ties in with Kennedy, Meese, and Vandernagel's argument that the use of algorithms from social media companies can impact or attempt to influence the agency of individuals. Now, that's certainly true if Facebook is giving user data um, away, not for just the individual, but also for their friends, so they can target those people in advertising campaigns and other measures. So that was interesting to see that that's something Facebook's now blocked. Um, but I needed to find a workaround. I needed to still implement the ability in my app to show the emotion of individuals in an image. And so, after consulting with a few people, I decided that the use of a URL, Command V, paste in a URL into my app, would be the way to go. And so, that's what I decided to implement.